Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric on our new series, High Time for Pi Time, where we take a look at the Raspberry Pi 4 with RetroPie and see just how capable it really is. And the number one request I was getting after the first video was people wanted to see if the Raspberry Pi 4 can handle the PlayStation Portable. Because I do have a PlayStation TV as well as a PSP, so I do have options to play it, but let's see how the Raspberry Pi 4 is holding up for PlayStation Portable emulation, because this is an awesome handheld. People really love it, and unless you have a PlayStation TV, getting the signal into a television can be kind of a pain in the butt. My PSP Go has video out, but you can't charge it at the same time, and that connector is quite confusing being at the bottom of the unit, so it's not a fun experience. But taking a look at the intro to Ape Escape here, a lesser intense 3D game, I am getting perfect performance out of the Raspberry Pi 4 so far. Now that is going to slightly change as we go on, but it seems to be that the less intense the game, the better experience we're going to have. Because I am rendering this right now at this stock internal resolution that the PlayStation Portable would handle, and I am getting a full 60 frames a second with absolutely no slowdown in the first area of Ape Escape. But you will see, based on the geometry and what's going on the screen, this isn't the most highest test game on the PlayStation Portable. So what we're finding out, at least at the beginning, is that the Raspberry Pi 4 can 100% keep pace with original PlayStation Portable hardware, at least in lighter games like Ape Escape. Now we will find that the results vary depending on what we're trying to play, but this is a good first result. If you want to play Ape Escape on the Raspberry Pi 4 with RetroPie using PPSSPP as the emulator, you're going to have a really good experience. And I will say that I upped the internal resolution to double scaling on this, and I have the exact same results, a lock 60 frames per second. And that's a really good look for the Raspberry Pi 4 because, of course, while it is a powerful board in its own right, compared to any relatively modern PC, it is going to be much under spec. So if we're going to try to play something like PlayStation Portable from our couch on the Pi, we want to see how it handles things. But let's move over to something slightly more intense, and that is Dracula X, or Rondo of Blood, the remake for PlayStation Portable. The original game is much better in my opinion, but the remake is quite fun as well. And again, to start here, we're at least rendering at the internal resolution. I have scaled this image to fit the screen a little bit, and I will be doing that throughout the video as well. It just gives you guys a better look. But right off the top, in stock resolution, right here as Death comes in on this chariot ride, everything's functioning at full speed, everything's working exactly how I would expect it to. But a lot of what emulation can do is improve on the stock settings. So let's go ahead into the RetroArch menus, and let's change the internal rendering resolution of the PlayStation Portable from its stock settings to 960 by 544. This would be a 2x internal resolution scale. And we'll go ahead and play that same area one more time. And what I noticed was there's a tiny bit of hitching. When Death throws the green skull here, you're going to see the screen just hitches ever so slightly. It's only for like 1 second, but something is struggling to keep up with this. Now, I am not doing any frame skipping. In my opinion, if you have to use frame skipping, it's not as good as original hardware, and I would recommend you use original hardware or another option for it. And you'll see right here, Death is thinking about throwing that green skull out. Here it comes, and just watch the trajectory, and right around there, it starts to drop frames and it slows down. Slightly unfortunate, but it's not a huge issue because once we actually get into the gameplay itself, at that 2x resolution, I don't have any issues with slowdown. So this is a situation where if there's an intense graphical setting being used on the hardware, if there's a special effect, it might slow down. But go ahead and listen to the music because that's as important, if not more so. I will change the resolution. I'll be back in a second, but enjoy. Sounds great, looks great at double resolution. There's no complaints for that particular Castlevania game. But let's move on to something much less intense. So Loco Roco, This game is spectacular. I bought this when I got my PlayStation Portable back in the day when it was released, and I still think it's one of the best games on the platform. Of course, graphics-wise, it's not very intense. It is a pure 2D game, and I am running this at 2x internal resolution. And again, we're getting spot-on 60 frames per second gameplay, absolutely no issues whatsoever. So what we're learning here more about PlayStation Portable emulation on RetroPie and the Raspberry Pi 4 is that the simpler the game, the better odds you are of going to be able to run it at full speed and be able to do that internal resolution scaling. I went to 4x on this and I started seeing frame rates more in the 50s, and if I'm dropping frames, that means I dial it back. I've got no tolerance for lost frames. So 2x scale, working really well. Same story with the Power Stone collection, originally a Dreamcast and Sega Naomi game, playing this at 2x internal resolution. It's a fighting game, so any slowdown is going to be apparent, it's going to screw up your inputs. And again, absolutely no issues whatsoever. I was actually expecting this one to do a little bit of slowdown at that 2x internal resolution, but everything is running exactly how I would expect it to. I own this game on both the Dreamcast and the Sega Naomi, and this is playing how I remember it. I'm able to pull off the same moves in the same cadences. This looks really good, and this is very promising for the Raspberry Pi 4 on RetroPie with the PPSSPP emulator, because I really did expect this one to slow down some, and that's not what I encountered whatsoever. And moving on to another stage, this is just fluid. I'm very impressed with what the Raspberry Pi 4 is putting out here, because I had read that there were slowdown issues, and honestly, I'm not judging any hardware or any operating system. If you love the Raspberry Pi and I say it slows down certain games, that is not an attack on the hardware, that is just me referencing what I'm experiencing. If you like it, if you want to play games on it and it gets you playing more games that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, I am 100% all for that. If you're happy, I'm happy. No judgments whatsoever. So at least with the Power Stone collection again, we're getting awesome performance. But let's move on to something ever so slightly different and see what else we get it to do. God of War Chains of Olympus is a slideshow. This does not run on the Raspberry Pi 4 with RetroPie. This is at the stock resolution settings, but I figured maybe we should dial it back even further from there, and again, just a slideshow. Now moving over to my editing system on the same emulator on RetroArch, but not on the Raspberry Pi, at internal resolution, this is running perfectly. Now I will say that this is not a fair fight because I have an i9 12900K and a 3080 Ti in my editing system. It is not your typical computer, it is for work. But we can just jack the internal resolution up to 4x, a full 19 and change by 10 and change. It's not perfect 1920 by 1080. But we have perfect 60 frames per second internal rendered resolution at a 4x scale. So if you want to play something like God of War Chains of Olympus, you're not going to be doing that on the Raspberry Pi 4, even if you overclock it. It's just too intensive a game for the platform, which is a little bit of a bummer. And moving on to Gran Turismo, I was finding the exact same issue. We're just too slow to play this game, and it will run perfectly fine on my computer system. So what are we starting to realize? PlayStation Portable emulation on the Raspberry Pi 4 with the RetroArch is okay. It is decent. The less graphically intense the game, the more odds you are going to have of being able to run it at a higher speed. And you can change the emulators between RetroArch and not, and you can go in and change some settings. I did turn frame skip on to see how much that would improve the performance, and I went to a frame skip of 3, and you will see that the game does become what I would call quote-unquote more playable, but for me, this is just not doing it. This is not fast enough to enjoy the game, and that's a little bit of a bummer. I was expecting slightly more, but if you want to play something like Castlevania with that 2x resolution scale, you're going to be golden. So the result of everyone asking, how does the PlayStation Portable emulation hold up on the Raspberry Pi 4? It's a little bit of a mixed bag. Some things incredible, some things don't work at all. Would I use my Raspberry Pi 4 versus something like my PlayStation TV to play PlayStation Portable games at this point in time? Maybe. I just don't know. The PlayStation TV hooks up to my televisions the same way and it runs everything. But yeah, that's the Raspberry Pi 4 with RetroArch and PlayStation Portable emulation. I give it like a 6 out of 10. Your results may vary. Short of that, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you have more ideas for Raspberry Pi videos, leave me a comment down below. I love making what you guys want to watch. Otherwise, I'll have videos throughout the week as well. But yeah, PlayStation Portable on the Raspberry Pi, decent. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.